The quantum sensors aboard the ESS Prometheus lit up like a Christmas tree as humanity's most advanced starship dropped out of FTL on the edges of the Carina Nebula. Dr. Sarah Harper's hands flew across the holographic interface, her dark eyes widening at the readings flooding her screen. "Captain Rivera," she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You need to see this." Captain James Rivera crossed the bridge in 3 long strides, the subtle artificial gravity generators barely registering his movement. The veteran spacer had seen his share of anomalies during humanity's first tentative steps into deep space, but nothing like this. "Talk to me, Doctor. These energy signatures." Sarah shook her head, platinum blonde hair catching the light of distant stars. "They're unlike anything we've ever encountered. The quantum fluctuations suggest technology operating on principles we've barely theorized about." Before Rivera could respond, the ship's AI chimed in. "Unknown vessel approaching. Configuration does not match any known design." The crew watched in stunned silence as a ship materialized before them, if you could call it a ship. The vessel seemed to exist in multiple states at once, its geometry defying conventional physics. It shimmered like a soap bubble in sunlight, its surface rippling with patterns that hurt the eyes to look at directly. "We're being hailed," Lieutenant Chen announced from her communications station. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies, including several we didn't know existed." Rivera straightened his uniform. 20 years of space exploration had prepared him for this moment, humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization. On screen, the being that appeared before them seemed to fold through space itself. Its form was vaguely humanoid, but it shifted and flowed like liquid mercury, occasionally revealing glimpses of geometric patterns that existed in dimensions human eyes were never meant to perceive. How quaint, the aliens' thoughts resonated directly in their minds. The primates have learned to build toys that reach the stars. Sarah felt her cheeks flush with anger, but Rivera maintained his diplomatic composure. "I am Captain James Rivera of the Earth spaceship Prometheus. We come in peace, seeking to exchange knowledge and establish diplomatic relations." The alien's form rippled with what might have been amusement. "I am Nexus Guide Zyril of the Zealoth Confluence. Your species amuses us. You fumble with 3-dimensional technology while we have mastered the 7th dimension. What could you possibly offer us?" Sarah stepped forward, unable to contain herself. "With respect, Nexus Guide, humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to learn and adapt. We may not have mastered dimensional manipulation, but our theoretical work on quantum mechanics and dimensional physics." "Theories?" Zyril's interruption felt like ice water down their spines. "You theorize about what we learned to manipulate before your species discovered fire. Observe." The space around the Zealoth vessel began to twist. Sarah's instruments went haywire as reality itself seemed to fold and unfold like origami in the hands of a master. The Prometheus's sensors registered energy readings that should have been impossible, spatial dimensions that shouldn't exist, and mathematical patterns that made their most advanced AI stutter and restart. "This is but a fraction of our capability," Zyril continued. "A simple demonstration that your primitive minds might comprehend. Perhaps in a few thousand years, you'll achieve something worth our notice. Until then, consider yourselves, what is your charming phrase? Ah yes. Out of your league." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. The Zealoth vessel rippled once more before vanishing, leaving behind only scattered quantum readings and wounded pride. Rivera turned to his science officer, expecting to see defeat in her eyes. Instead, Sarah Harper was smiling, her fingers already dancing across her console. "Did you get all that?" she asked her AI assistant. "Affirmative, Doctor. Full sensor readings of the dimensional manipulation event have been recorded." "Good." Sarah looked up at Rivera, her eyes blazing with determination. "They just showed us exactly what we needed to see, Captain. They thought they were demonstrating their superiority, but what they really gave us was a roadmap. Rivera raised an eyebrow. A roadmap to what, Doctor? To proving them wrong. Sarah was already deep in calculations, her mind racing with possibilities. They think we're primitive because we work with what we know. But humanity's greatest achievements have always come from pushing beyond our limits, from reaching for what everyone else said was impossible. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, Sarah said, her voice growing stronger with conviction, that we take their mockery and turn it into motivation. They've mastered the seventh dimension. Fine. Let's show them what happens when human ingenuity meets dimensional physics. They think we're thousands of years behind. I say we prove them wrong in less than one. Rivera studied his science officer's face, seeing the same fire that had taken humanity from stone tools to the stars in a heartbeat of cosmic time. He smiled slowly, pressing the calm button on his chair. Bridge to engineering. How would you all feel about making history? The Prometheus turned for home, carrying more than just sensor data and wounded pride. It carried the seeds of a revolution, one that would show the Zealoth and the galaxy at large that underestimating humanity was the last mistake any species would make. 6 months after the Prometheus's encounter with the Zealoth, Earth had changed. The transmission of first contact had leaked despite government attempts at containment, and humanity's response wasn't fear or despair, it was determination. Deep beneath the ice sheets of Europa, Dr. Sarah Harper stood in the heart of Project Ascendant. The facility sprawled through the moon's subsurface ocean, hidden from prying eyes by kilometers of ice and the most advanced stealth technology humanity had ever developed. The central chamber housed their greatest achievement and greatest frustration, the dimensional resonance engine. Run the simulation again, Sarah ordered, her voice hoarse from too many sleepless nights. Around her, holographic displays showed mathematical formulas that would have been incomprehensible a year ago. The Zealoth's demonstration had given them just enough of a glimpse to revolutionize human understanding of physics. Dr. Harper, her AI assistant, Aria, spoke up. This will be the 47th attempt today. The team's efficiency is dropping by approximately 3% per hour. They can rest when we crack this. Sarah tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, studying the results of the last failed simulation. We're missing something fundamental about how the Zealoth manipulate dimensional boundaries. Perhaps that's the problem, a new voice said. Dr. Marcus Chen, theoretical physicist and Sarah's former mentor, walked into the chamber. We're trying to copy their methods instead of developing our own. Sarah turned to argue, but Marcus held up a hand. Hear me out. The Zealoth evolved differently than us. Their entire civilization developed with an innate understanding of higher dimensions. We're trying to force our three-dimensional minds to comprehend seven-dimensional space. What's your point? Sarah asked, though she had a feeling she knew where he was going. Instead of trying to think like them, maybe we should think like us. Humanity's greatest achievements came not from copying others, but from finding our own path. Marcus walked to the central console, pulling up the basic principles they'd been working with. What if we stopped trying to bend space and started trying to dance with it? Sarah's exhaustion-fogged mind began to clear. You mean like surfing a wave instead of trying to control the ocean? Exactly. Marcus's fingers flew across the interface. The Zealoth brute forced their way through dimensional barriers. But what if we could find the natural resonance points, the places where dimensions naturally intersect? For the next 12 hours, they reimagined their entire approach. Instead of trying to tear holes in reality, they designed a system that would detect and enhance natural dimensional harmonics. It was less powerful than the Zealoth's technology, but it was distinctly human. 2 weeks later, Captain Rivera arrived for his monthly inspection. He found Sarah and her team celebrating in the main lab. I take it you have good news, he asked, noting the open bottles of champagne. Sarah's grin was answer enough, but she led him to the testing chamber anyway. Inside, a small probe hovered above the ground, surrounded by sensors and monitoring equipment. Watch this, she said, entering a command sequence. The probe didn't vanish in a flash of light or tear a hole in space. Instead, it began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt. The air around it took on a pearlescent quality, and for a brief moment, Rivera could have sworn he saw multiple versions of the probe occupying the same space. "We're not forcing our way through dimensions," Sarah explained, her voice thick with pride. "We're finding the places where they naturally overlap and, sliding through. It's like finding a door instead of breaking down a wall." "How does it compare to the Zelith's technology?" "It's less efficient, technically speaking. Their method is like using a blowtorch to open a safe. Ours is more like knowing the combination." Sarah's eyes sparkled. "But here's the beautiful part, because we're working with natural dimensional harmonics, we're actually more precise. We can do things they probably never considered because they're too focused on raw power." Rivera watched the probe phase back into normal space, completely intact. "How soon until we can scale this up?" "That's the other good news," Marcus chimed in. "Because we're not fighting against natural laws, the power requirements are significantly lower than we initially calculated. We could have a prototype ship ready for testing in 8 months. "Make it 6, Rivera said, his expression serious. "Our long-range sensors detected Zelith vessels at the edge of our solar system last week. They're getting curious about what we're up to." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but it was accompanied by a fierce determination. 6 months it is. They want to see what primitive humans are capable of. We'll show them something they've never seen before." As Rivera left the facility, he couldn't help but smile. The Zelith had meant to put humanity in its place, to show them how far they had to go. Instead, they'd sparked a revolution. In trying to demonstrate their superiority, they'd given humanity exactly what it needed most, a challenge. The countdown to humanity's great leap forward had begun, and this time, they weren't following anyone else's path. They were blazing their own trail through the higher dimensions, and the galaxy would never be the same. The warning klaxons blared through Europa Station as emergency containment fields snapped into place around Test Chamber 7. Dr. Sarah Harper watched in horror as the experimental dimensional drive tore itself apart, releasing cascading waves of dimensional energy that warped and twisted everything they touched. "Get those dampening fields to maximum," she shouted over the chaos. "We can't let the resonance cascade reach the primary facility." Through the observation window, she watched as 3 years of work disintegrated into a swirling maelstrom of intersecting realities. Worse, her best friend and lead engineer, Dr. Kira Patel, was still inside trying to stabilize the core. "Kira, get out of there now." Sarah's voice cracked with desperation. "The containment field won't hold much longer." "Almost, got it." Kira's voice came through distorted, as if speaking from multiple places at once. "The harmonic stabilizers are, wait, something's wrong." The next few seconds seemed to stretch into eternity. Sarah watched helplessly as Kira's form blurred, existing in several dimensional states simultaneously. Then, with a sound like reality itself tearing, the test chamber imploded. When the emergency systems finally cleared the dimensional distortions, Kira was gone. Hours later, Sarah sat in the facility's medical bay, her hands still shaking. Captain Rivera stood beside her, reading the preliminary incident report. "Dr. Patel's sacrifice will be remembered," he said softly. "But we have bigger problems." The energy spike from the accident was detected by 3 Zelith scout ships in the outer system. Sarah looked up sharply. "How long?" "Until they investigate. Intelligence gives us 2 weeks, maybe less." Rivera's expression was grim. "The project is being shut down, Doctor. The risks are too high." "No." Sarah stood, her grief transforming into steel-hard resolve. Kira didn't die for nothing. She saw something in those final moments, something in the dimensional flux patterns. "Arya, pull up the last sensor readings before the containment breach." The AI projected a holographic display showing the chaotic energy patterns from the accident. Sarah studied them intently, her mind racing. There, she pointed to a recurring pattern in the chaos. The drive wasn't failing. It was trying to achieve a natural harmonic state, but our containment systems were forcing it to maintain an artificial pattern. We've been going about this all wrong. She turned to Rivera. The Zealoth approach treats dimensional barriers like walls to be broken. We tried to be more subtle, finding natural weak points to slip through. But what if there's a third option? Sarah's fingers flew across the holographic interface, modeling a new configuration. What if instead of trying to move through dimensions, we let the dimensions move through us? A perfect dimensional resonance, like becoming part of the universal frequency. You're talking about completely redesigning the system, Rivera objected. We don't have time. We don't have time not to, Sarah cut him off. The Zealoth are coming, and if they shut us down now, everything we've sacrificed will be for nothing. Give me 3 days. Just 3 days to prove this concept. Rivera studied her face, seeing the same determination he'd witnessed on the Prometheus 3 years ago. You have 48 hours. Make them count. The next 2 days became a blur of calculations, simulations, and coffee. Sarah barely slept, driven by equal parts grief and determination. The new design took shape, not a drive system that fought against reality, but one that would allow a ship to become part of the dimensional fabric itself. When the final simulation ran, the results were beyond anything they'd hoped for. The energy requirements were a fraction of their previous design, and the theoretical stability was off the charts. It's beautiful, Marcus whispered, watching the mathematical models dance across their screens. It's like we've been trying to swim upstream all this time, and you've just taught us how to become the river. Sarah touched the screen where Kira's final sensor readings were displayed. She showed us the way. In those last moments, she saw what we couldn't, that we were asking the wrong questions all along. The facility burst into action as the new design was rushed into production. They had less than 2 weeks to build and test a working prototype before the Zealoth arrived, but for the first time since the accident, Sarah felt real hope. As she watched the construction crews begin dismantling the old test chamber, she made a silent promise to Kira. They would succeed, not by copying the Zealoth or by brute force, but by understanding something fundamental about the universe that their alien observers had never considered. The price had been high, too high, but they were on the verge of something revolutionary. Humanity was about to show the galaxy that there was more than one way to master the dimensions, and their way might just change everything. The Zealoth warships arrived exactly when intelligence predicted, their impossible geometries casting strange shadows across Europa's icy surface. Sarah watched them through the facility's quantum sensors, her heart pounding as the alien vessels began their descent. Status report, Rivera demanded, his voice tight with tension. Prototype is at 98% completion, Sarah responded, not taking her eyes off the readings. Final calibrations are underway. Marcus is installing the resonance crystals now. The facility shuddered as the first Zealoth ship landed on the surface above them. Their stealth systems were good, but against 7th-dimensional sensors, they might as well have been hiding under a blanket. They're broadcasting, Lieutenant Chen announced from her station. Full spectrum, just like before. The familiar, mind-bending presence of Nexus Guide Zyril filled their thoughts. Did you truly believe you could hide your crude attempts at dimensional manipulation from us? Your activities have been monitored since your ship first limped home with our gift of knowledge. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Gift? They'd meant to humble humanity, to put them in their place. Instead, they'd given them a challenge, and humans had never been good at staying in their assigned place. The prototype is ready, Marcus's voice came through the comm, but Sarah, you need to see this. She rushed to the testing bay, leaving Rivera to handle the diplomatic stalling. The prototype ship, barely larger than a shuttle, sat in the center of the chamber, its hull incorporating the crystalline lattices they developed to channel dimensional energies. But something was different. The crystals were resonating on their own, creating patterns of light and energy that rippled through higher dimensions. "It's like it's alive," Marcus breathed. "The dimensional frequencies, they're shifting to match the natural harmonics of spacetime itself." Sarah's mind raced. This wasn't in any of their simulations, but somehow it felt right. "Load the test coordinates. We're launching now. The Zealth will shut us down if we wait any longer." Sarah climbed into the prototype's cockpit, strapping herself in. "Everything we've worked for comes down to this moment." Above them, Xyrel's voice resonated through the facility again. "Your attempts at dimensional technology are dangerous and uncontrolled. For the safety of this sector, we are assuming control of this facility. Resist, and we will be forced to take more decisive action." Sarah activated the prototype systems, watching as the crystalline lattices began to glow with inner light. The dimensional resonance built around her, not fighting against reality but becoming part of its fundamental rhythm. "My God," Marcus whispered, watching the readings. "Sarah, the ship isn't just moving through dimensions, it's singing with them." A bright light flared from above as the Zealth began cutting through Europa's ice. They had minutes, maybe less. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the dimensional harmonies through the neural interface they developed. "Recording all sensor data," Arya announced. "Prototype dimensional drive engaging in 3, 2, 1. The universe changed. Not with the violent tear of Zealth technology, but with a shift so subtle it was almost beautiful. Sarah felt reality ripple around her like waves on an ocean, and the prototype responded to her thoughts as naturally as breathing. Through the dimensional sensors, she could see the Zealth ships above, their brutal tears in spacetime like wounds in reality. But her ship, her human ship, moved between those tears like water flowing around rocks. "Impossible," Xyrel's thought voice held something new, shock. "Your primitive understanding of dimensional physics cannot." "Can't what?" Sarah's voice was steady as she maneuvered through dimensional spaces the Zealth had never even considered. "Can't find a better way? Can't see past brute force to recognize the natural harmonies of the universe?" The prototype danced through reality, not fighting against dimensional barriers but becoming one with them. Where the Zealth ships forced their way through spacetime, the human vessel flowed with it, achieving more with less energy and greater precision than should have been possible. "You showed us what was possible," Sarah continued, her ship performing maneuvers that defied Zealth understanding. "But we didn't copy you. We did what humans have always done, we innovated, we adapted, and we found our own path." The prototype sped past the Zealth vessels, leaving them frozen in amazement as it demonstrated capabilities they had never imagined. It wasn't just traveling through dimensions, it was harmonizing with them, becoming part of a universal dance they had never thought to observe. In their rush to master the dimensions through force, the Zealth had missed something fundamental, something that humanity, with its primitive perspective, had seen clearly. Sometimes the greatest strength wasn't in dominating nature, but in understanding it deeply enough to become part of its flow. The moment of truth had arrived, and humanity had done more than prove themselves. They had shown the galaxy a whole new way to look at reality itself. 5 years after humanity's dimensional breakthrough, the galaxy had changed in ways no one, not even the Zealth, could have predicted. Sarah Harper stood at the observation deck of the Harmonic Institute, watching ships from a dozen different species arrive for the annual Dimensional Sciences Conference. The ships were a study in contrasts. Some still used traditional Zealth-style technology, tearing their way through spacetime with brute force. Others had adopted humanity's resonance approach, their crystalline hulls singing in harmony with the dimensional fabric of the universe. But most interesting were the hybrid designs, combining multiple approaches in ways that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. "Still hard to believe sometimes, isn't it?" Marcus asked, joining her at the window. Age had whitened his hair, but his eyes still held the same enthusiasm for discovery. "That the mighty Zealth now send their students to learn from us primitives." Sarah smiled. "I think Kira would have loved the irony." The memorial to Kira Patel stood in the center of the Institute's main courtyard, its crystalline structure constantly shifting through dimensional harmonies. Her sacrifice had become a symbol of humanity's journey from ridiculed newcomers to respected innovators. Ambassador Zyril has arrived, Arya announced, her holographic form materializing beside them. Sarah nodded, straightening her formal uniform. The former Nexus Guide had undergone quite a transformation since their first encounter. Like many Zealoth, Zyril had initially dismissed humanity's approach as primitive and dangerous. But results were hard to argue with. The meeting chamber was packed with representatives from across known space. Sarah took her place at the podium, remembering a time when humans had been considered barely worth acknowledging in galactic affairs. "Welcome to the 5th Annual Dimensional Sciences Conference," she began. "When we first ventured into the galaxy, we were told our understanding of dimensional physics was thousands of years behind the curve. We were mocked for our primitive technology and limited perspective." Her eyes met Zyril's, seeing not condescension now but respect. But what our critics didn't understand was that being behind can be an advantage. We weren't bound by centuries of established doctrine. We were free to question, to explore, to find new paths that others had overlooked. The holographic displays activated, showing the latest breakthrough, a revolutionary approach to dimensional travel that combined Zealoth power with human harmony and elements from 3 other species' unique perspectives. "Today, we stand at a new frontier," Sarah continued. "Not as masters teaching lessers, but as partners in exploration. Every species brings its own perspective, its own innovations. The Zealoth taught us that dimensional barriers could be broken. We showed that they could be danced with. The Aurori showed us how to sing to them, and the Vex taught us to dream with them." She gestured to the ships visible through the chamber's transparent walls. "Look at what we've achieved together. Ships that don't just travel through dimensions but harmonize with the very fabric of reality. Medical techniques that heal by realigning dimensional frequencies. Energy systems that draw power from the natural resonance of spacetime itself." A small probe floated to the center of the chamber, an exact replica of the one they'd lost in that first tragic accident. But now, instead of fighting against dimensional barriers, it existed in perfect harmony with them, demonstrating the principles that had revolutionized galactic science. "This is humanity's true gift to the galaxy," Sarah concluded. "Not just our technology or our methods, but our reminder that there is always another way. That being behind doesn't mean staying behind. That sometimes, the best path forward is the one no one else thought to look for." As applause filled the chamber, Sarah caught Zyril's eye again. The Zealotha's form rippled in what she had learned to recognize as their equivalent of a smile. They had come so far from that first dismissive encounter, learning from each other, growing together. The probe danced through dimensions, its crystalline structure singing in harmony with the universe itself. It was a testament to how far they'd come, and a promise of how far they could still go. Humanity had done more than prove themselves, they had helped forge a new path forward for all species. And somewhere, Sarah liked to think, Kira was watching and smiling, knowing that her sacrifice had helped humanity find its true place among the stars, not as followers or imitators, but as innovators who dared to dream of better ways. The galaxy had expected humans to be students. Instead, they had become teachers, partners, and pioneers. Their supposed weakness, their primitive perspective, had turned out to be their greatest strength. In seeking their own path, they had opened new roads for everyone to explore. The future stretched before them, full of possibilities that even the Zealoth had never imagined. And humanity, as always, was ready to lead the way into the unknown, one harmonic resonance at a time.